So we'll give a couple minutes, just I know Layman and Lewis are both upstairs trying to get down here. Hey, good morning. First, I'll start by apologizing for the meeting being at 9 and not 9:30 and on the first day of school. Not sure as a mom what I was thinking with that myself. So this is the third meeting of the Strategic Opportunities Review Working Group. The City of London is situated in the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Naboak, and Attawandaron. We honor and respect the history, language, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. All members of this committee are present in person today, with the exception of Councillor Stevenson, who has sent their regrets. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact 519-661-2489, extension 2425. I will note that we do have a member of the public joining us today in the room, and they are aware that there is no delegation or speaking opportunities, but they can connect with questions afterwards. For consent item or disclosures, pecuniary interest, looking to committee to working group to see if there is any. Seeing none, consent items, we have 2.1 through to 2.3. Looking to see if we're okay dealing with these individually. Okay, so we will start with 2.1. This is the London Police Service Reserve Fund bylaw review. And advance notice was given by Councillor Rahman of a motion that they will be looking at making today, but looking to start with that one to see if there's any discussion prior to the council. Councillor Rahman, there seems to be none. Did you want to start the conversation off with your motion? Yeah, the clerk does have the language if you want her to read it out. I did not bring my laptop, so.
Councillor Rahman's recommendation is that the following actions be taken with respect to the staff report dated September 4th, 2024, regarding the London Police Service Reserve Fund bylaw review. A, the London Police Service Reserve Fund Review Report be received for information. B, the report be forwarded to the London Police Service Board Chair and the Chief of Police. And C, the Budget Chair and Deputy Mayor be requested to engage in discussions with the London Police Service Board regarding this report. It been noted that the Strategic Opportunities Review Working Group received a communication dated August 30th, 2024 from C. Butler with respect to this matter.
Do we need a seconder or no? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Counselor Purple has his hand up to second. So it is moved and second on the floor. Would you like to make comments?
Thank you, and through you this morning, thank you for reading that out. I appreciate it. Just had to get my laptop going there. The motion in front of you today is one to recognize the need to provide this information to the London Police Service Board with respect to this report. Again, in the spirit of collaboration and continued discussion, the rest of the motion proceeds. I do think that there is opportunity within this report for some good dialogue at this point to allow for the discussions to move in a positive manner to find some opportunities to continue to collaborate. And that's the intention of the motion. And so I hope that committee will support it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers, Counselor Lehman? Jared, do you want to go next or? Okay. I'll put you on the list. Thank you, Counselor.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll speak as a counselor, not wearing my police board hat, because we all know that we have to wear different hats depending on where we're engaging, right? So I just want to make one comment. Yeah, the police services took a hit in COVID. That's what as many organizations did, and had to rely on the reserve fund, which is why reserve funds are there. That being said, we can see that I'm confident that we will make progress on that deficit, and we'll get back up there. Now, wearing my counselor's hat, I fully support Councillor Rahman and bringing this motion forward. We'll see what the discussion is at the police services board. I expect it would be perceived as a friendly. I don't see that it will be, is perceived as something coming at us that we want to aggressively oppose, but I can't speak for the board. I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts. As a counselor, for sure, given our budget situation and the tax levy on our taxpayers, I think this is prudent. And as much as I say I don't wear hats, I do a bit when I bring that. Everyone on the board, police services, is well aware of the tax levy and the need to deliver on the promises made, and which committed to 100 million%. With that is proper fiscal management, and there has been moves made by the board to address that, and I think this falls in line with where the board I think is going strategically. But again, I speak for myself as a counselor. We'll see how it's received at the board, but for sure, I fully support Councillor Rahman's initiative here.
Thank you, Sir Chair. I'm very glad to hear your words from both. I'm very glad to hear the words from a councillor who is also on the board of our police board. I would like to just reiterate very briefly the couple of things that were already said. Collaboration and positive manner, because I do think that that's the approach that needs to be taken. And bottom line is to come up with conclusions and results that deliver the best possible results for 500,000 of Londoners, what it comes down to. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as that motion did reference Deputy Mayor Lewis and myself doing engagement. Just looking to the deputy mayor, I knew behind the scenes, your thoughts, but
Yes, so I really appreciate Counselor Rahman bringing this forward, suggesting the two of us makes it easy because then we only need Liridana to schedule a meeting and not multiple assistants. Um, And I don't recall ever seeing Counselor Lehman actually wearing a hat. In the time that I've seen him here in the last 5 years. However, I will say, in all seriousness though, around the discussion, I do think that there is, and while I recognize what Councillor Lehman was saying, there's reserve funds for a reason and they were tapped during COVID. I also think when we look at the environmental scan that's been done already, a 5 to 10% is a very large range for a contingency. And so I think a respectful conversation, I think we need to have this same conversation within our own departments here at City Hall, is what is a reasonable number. And most municipalities seem to hover around the 5% mark. So I think that that's a respectful conversation to have with LPS about whether or not they really need that full range. Or whether it can be smaller. Now, I recognize that they've pretty much drained their reserve fund over the last number of years, and it's going to take a while to build back up to any sort of target anyway. But I think that that's a conversation worth having with them and just seeing if there's any opportunity for us to reduce those costs in the long run. So happy to make the time to go with you as a delegation, Madam Chair, and speak with the Police Services Board.
thank you. I was also consulted beforehand and willing to go as the city's budget chair. The city's reserve funds, I'd asked Mr. Murray, are running around 3.3 right now. And our different agency boards and commissions have a range as well that service the city. Councillor Lehman, I saw your hand pop back up.
Yeah, if the chair will permit, this is a working group. I'm going to sway a bit, not a standing committee. So, when we're looking at reserve funds, I understand the pragmatism of having suitable reserve funds, but I think, we have various reserve funds, actually at City Hall. And whenever we've looked at making changes to those reserve funds, we're being told that, well, we've got a AAA credit rating, which we protect at all costs, which I totally agree with. I totally understand that. But that being said, sometimes with reserve funds, they allow for inefficiencies. Sometimes they creep up because we know we got a reserve fund to go to, or there extra spending that happens because we can, oh, well, we won't take it out of tax levy, but we'll go to, we have this reserve fund or that fund. In a broader scope, I think maybe it's time, and I don't know if this is the forum for it, but being the budget chair is here, I just want to put that thought on the table. Those are the dangers sometimes with reserve funds. And I think we just have to recognize that. And when we're making decisions at council, when we say, well, we'll spend the money and we'll find it over here. Well, that money is not for that. That money is a reserve fund in case things go south unexpectedly and we have to cover things. So same thing with the police. We can't use this reserve fund if we're not getting our job done, meeting budgets and finding efficiencies. Oh, well, we'll just take it out of the reserve fund at the end of the year to cover our back. So that's another reason why I'm supporting Councillor Rahman's motion here. It just brings a fiscal restraint, is for a lack of a better word, to those that are minding the shop.
Thank you. Looking for further speakers before calling the question? Seeing none, all in favor?
Motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to item 2.2, being the service review training for agency boards and commission. This was one that the mayor had submitted to the committee. The recommendation that this report be received for information and that civic administration be directed to proceed with the service review training for agency boards and commissions at the estimated cost of $15,000 excluding HST. It being known the cost will be funded from the city's efficiency, effectiveness, and economic reserve. looking to see if someone would like to, it's like the Triple E reserve, but trying to lay it out. Looking for a mover. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Cuddy. Looking to see if there's any discussion on this one. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief. I did speak to the mayor last night since he's not going to be here for this meeting. I said I'd speak to this quickly for him. And really, this is a first step. This is the training step. And just as we see in annual budget updates through the course of a multi-year budget, the annual service review from our staff and where they've been able to make permanent ongoing reductions or even one-time savings in some cases. This is the training to empower the boards and commissions to go and do the same thing themselves. So while right now it looks like a cost, that is to provide the training so that they can come back with additional savings and efficiencies when they bring their budget asks forward. So this is a really good first step. It's the proper source of funding from the Triple E fund. It's the same source of funding we use for our own cost saving initiatives. So I think that makes a lot of sense and hope everybody will be supporting it.
Councillor Pruill.
Thank you. Very brief. I think this is a very proactive initiative and great incentives ahead. Very much support of it. And I do believe it will have positive results for our community.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, a hand vote, all in favor?
Closing the vote, the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. That leaves us with item 2.3 being the City of London Municipal Golf Update. So this is a report to this committee. The recommendation from staff is that it be received, looking to committee for questions, discussions, and looking to see what you would like done with the report that's before us. Councillor Rahman.
Thank you. Are there staff for this report?
Yep, I believe JP is with us. Mr. McGonigal.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Wonderful. I just had a question regarding the mention in the report of, I believe it was on the last page, where it looked at potentials for the future and it mentioned opportunities around revenue generation. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that at all.
To staff.
Yeah, thank you for the question and through the chair. We've continued to focus on revenue generation over the last few years so we can increase our reinvestment into required capital. I think as we continue to upgrade the structures and the courses moving forward, that we'll have opportunities to generate more advertising and sponsorship revenue. But obviously advertisers and sponsors can look to the facility condition or the quality of those locations before they choose to invest in advertising and sponsorship. So that's one area we expect to increase revenue generation. And I think the other way is that we continue to try and utilize golf properties in the off season for other recreational needs, which does also generate user fee revenue. And so those are just a couple of mechanisms that we continue to focus on.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I know that this update was more specifically to this committee around opportunities to look at this for potential partnerships, et cetera. But I'm just wondering, in the updated recreational plan that is coming, will we see any information around how golf courses in the city help with some of our climate emergency action plan goals as well, and whether or not there are more opportunities for carbon capture in these spaces?
To staff.
Thank you. And through the chair, in the list of capital works that we've provided in the short summary that is in the staff report, we obviously have added a lot of new components related to energy efficiency and GHG reductions. And with the expertise of our facility staff, we will continue to do that, not just at the golf courses, but all City of London owned facilities as we continue to look for ways to decrease the greenhouse gases and control some of the energy usage.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I suspect in the updated plan, we'll have more of forecasting in terms of with population growth, what we see as anticipated growth within the sector or the sport, I should say.
Staff?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question and through the chair. The main purpose of updating the 2019 Parks and Recreation Master Plan is to update the population projections. What I would say is there is no provision target for the future of golf courses in the municipality. There's recommendations to build more, but the City of London and municipal golf systems are certainly not intended to be kind of the sole deliverer of golf courses, and Southwestern Ontario is a very heavy populated golf region in the country and in the world. And so while we will have population projections, we're not expecting that those population projections result in any future new course builds, as an example.
Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to receive this report and the information provided. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from committee? Because I would still need a motion on the floor. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So since we have Mr. McGonigal with us, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask a couple questions as well. The partnership examples that were cited, I know that they're very high level. Aside from advertising, sponsorship revenue, have we, through our golf system, I know there's some partnerships in other parts of recreation. Do we have any active partnerships right now where either a not-for-profit is running some programming at one of our courses, or there's any sort of joint service delivery situations? I know we have community centers where, you know, the YMCA is running the aquatics and we're running the arena space or the community meeting room space. Especially as you talked about looking at off-season uses for our golf courses, would that be envisioned as being city-provided services, or are we actively looking for partnerships to run, you know, winter cross-country skiing or something like that? Where are we in terms of partnerships with the golf system right now versus, and of course, if you can give any sort of insight into what you might be looking at. I know winter uses are still fairly new to the agenda for golf, but any sort of crystal balling that you might share with us, not holding you to it as a carved in stone thing, but where you might be looking for some, public not-for-profit or public-private partnerships in regard to the better utilization 12 months of the year for our courses.
Staff?
Thank you. And through the chair, I'll start by stating that we do have examples of the partnerships that are outlined at the high level in the report. Many of those partnerships are really service contracts where we are going to the market for golf carts, as an example, tee sheet providers, third-party resellers who may be able to resell underutilized times in a day or spaces. In terms of not-for-profit organizations, we do have the Parkside 9 accessible course at Fanshawe, and we do have a partnership with Special Olympics, who plays there frequently throughout a week in a bit of an organized fashion. And so we do have that partnership. We have other examples that have come to fruition this year where we partner with Namarand to provide weekly opportunities for golfing for individuals that they serve at Namarand. And in terms of moving forward, I think as we're have increased our ability to reinvest into the courses and the clubhouses, that they become much more suitable for off-season use. And so I'll try not to speculate too much, but we have given previous examples where we have been running snowshoeing over the past couple of years at Thames Valley. We feel as though there certainly is a food and beverage component that could be utilized at Thames Valley, specifically in the off season. and really some increased community space and some increased opportunities to run our own recreation programs. But that certainly wouldn't prohibit any opportunities that may present themselves that we feel furthers the Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I guess just in follow-up, in terms of how those are developed, is it organizations that come to us looking for partnerships, or are there some active or proactive outreaches to see if an organization might fill what we've identified as a need or an opportunity, but don't necessarily have the staffing capacity or the in-house expertise to deliver ourselves? And like you touched on the food and beverage, and it does seem to me like having the food and beverage run by a partner rather than trying to do that ourselves kind of makes sense. I mean, we're not exactly in the restaurant business as the City of London, but I'm just wondering if there's, like, what does that process look like? Is there discussions pursued, particularly with the not-for-profits? I understand on the private side, we'd be looking at RFPs and those sorts of things. But with the not-for-profits, is it they approach us, or is there both an opportunity for us to go out and look for partners as well?
To staff.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. I think both things are true. And so as an example, we've been working closely with Namarand to try and increase Indigenous participation at City of London facilities. And so we are in active conversations with them all the time. Special Olympics has approached us. We have not, we at this time have not seeked out any partners to run components of the business at this time. And in 2020 and 21, when we were concluding the last service review, part of the reason for that was that we didn't actually have the funding to improve the facilities enough where we thought that anybody would be interested in partnering or leasing the space. We're very happy with the services and aspects of the services that we currently deliver. I recognize that there certainly is food and beverage expertise out in the community, both privately and from a not-for-profit perspective. We have had some preliminary conversations about how golf courses could be used from a food education and nutrition education perspective, which also furthers the Parks and Rec Master Plan objectives and goals. But that isn't direction we've received previously from council, and at this time we don't have any plans to change our food and beverage delivery or other aspects of the business where other bodies or organizations may operate parts of the business.
Deputy Mayor.
Okay, I think I'll give others an opportunity to ask if they've got any questions as well. I'm just going to share a comment on the climate aspect. I know that there are advocates who are championing golf courses. We need more golf courses because they're green space. I don't think that that's where Councillor Rahman was necessarily coming from with her comments, but I've seen that presented a couple times. And to me, from an environmental perspective, you know, the monoculture of fairways and greens is not super good for biodiversity in the environment. So where there's opportunities for things like carbon capture and some biodiversity, that makes some sense. But I don't really see that the golf courses themselves as contributing to the environment in a positive green space way. But I am interested in sort of what we just heard about not necessarily having explored all of the opportunities for food and beverage and those sorts of things. Also recognizing that we're in a transitional change. I will say, as we start to reinvest back in our spaces, and that wouldn't have been viable a couple of years ago. I will say I really appreciate in the report the highlights in terms of where we've made some reinvestments already. And with the absorption of the rounds played at River Road, I note that 2023 was actually looks like our best year since 2015 in terms of number of rounds played. So that's encouraging to see. I guess my final question in terms of capacity for you, Mr. McGonigal, before I shut up and let other people have a chance to speak. With absorbing those rounds from River Road, was there an impact in terms of our ability to manage our booking system, like things? Was the transition smooth, and did we see sort of a smoothing of tea times as a result, where it wasn't necessarily all clustered into a couple of day parts where it was a little bit more smooth usage? Is that where the absorption came from, or can you speak at all to the absorption of the rounds that used to be played at River Road?
To staff?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And through the chair, I'm sure as committee can appreciate this transition happened in COVID, which was an incredibly complicated time for demand in golf, particularly given the fact that it was one of the only permitted outdoor activities. I think what I can say to the committee is 2023 and 22 were certainly much smoother than 21. And we feel very comfortable in our ability to absorb the rounds. But it does not mean that members have not chosen to go play at other places. If River Road was the course that they chose to play most frequently. And so it is possible that some members and other players went in other directions, but we certainly have had new players come in our direction as well, which I think is critical on seeing the 120,000 rounds, which is a record amount of rounds in 2023. But we were comfortable in kind of 22 and 23 on how those were absorbed. Obviously 20 and 21 were a fairly chaotic environment.
Deputy Mayor?
Great, thank you for that. And of course, that just ties back into what you said earlier. It's the municipality is not the sole provider of golf. This is one of the few recreation areas where we actually do compete with the private sector in terms of the options that they provide. So I think that that would be consistent, that some golfers probably did leave for private courses, while we also may have picked up new ones along the way. So thank you for that.
Looking to further questions or comments? Because I still need a motion on the floor to receive the report or do other stuff. Councillor Pribble.
Thank you, and I have a couple of comments. Thank you, Mr. McGonigal, for presenting this positive report. I do want to say and stress, which you already said, to continue proactively and strategically identify and target potential partners, because I do think that that's a great opportunity for the city, and to look at to reinvest. And you mentioned the snowshoeing at Thames Valley, which I think is another great initiative. And for example, I believe if we were to do something with the bottom level, we can even increase the activities for winter. But again, very positive, on the right track. Let's stay focused and let's be proactive and strategically identify those partners. Please feel free to make any comments if you wish. Thank you. No more comments from me.
Is committee looking to receive this report then? Okay, I'm mover and Councillor Lehman, because you don't get to go till this is dealt with. I will need a seconder. Like the mom stare down. Councillor Cuddy seconds. Looking for other questions or comments on this report? Calling the question, all in favor of receiving this report?
Motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes our consent items. I have no scheduled items. Under items for direction, we have one, which is a discussion of the next meeting date. I promised publicly that this would be the last meeting date of this committee working group prior to the mayor's annual budget update, which is anticipated in October, I believe, end of October, around the 28th. So for this committee, I had received some questions going into it. So our next meeting date wouldn't be till 2025 at some point. As procedurally for the bylaws, I'm required to call 4 per year. There was a question behind the scenes about if we didn't want to meet again as a committee, procedurally, what that would look like. And that would be a motion to request that the mayor dissolve this working group as we've concluded this budget update, and any reports that would be forthcoming to this committee just be directed to the appropriate standing committees of council. This was the first time for this working group, 3 meetings. Some meetings went smoother than others. But we'd always do committee work through committee versus this working group. So looking to the working group to see the will of it of, I could just make it that a future date will be announced in 2025, or we request that the mayor deem this concluded. Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it'd be my preference that we just don't set a future meeting date at this point. And that we, even if the decision is to recommend that we dissolve the group, that we consider that in 2025. And I'm only saying that because I'd like to see the annual budget update before I am comfortable knowing whether this committee has more, or this working group has more work to do or not. Quite honestly, and I don't want to put project, but I suspect that I'll be looking for some of the same things Councillor Rahman will be looking for in terms of, did our recommendations even make it into the budget? And that will influence whether or not I feel like there's value in continuing this working group. So my preference would be that we take a wait and see approach.
Okay, and for anyone who wanted to recap, the working group reports go into SPPC and then through council, and then the mayor considers things and uses his strong mayor powers to make his budget, which he will be working on, and Elise is with us online. And then we'll see that end of October, and then we'll roll into November for our normal budget deliberations, which I'll lead, and then I don't know what's in it until then. So fair comments. So would anyone else like to make a comment? Because I am fine putting next meeting date to be call the chair in 2025. Councillor Cuddy.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And I would agree with Deputy Mayor Lewis that I'd like to do a wait and see approach. If there's an impact on the work that we've done, and we won't know that until later this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would look to someone to move a motion just right on to relinquish chair that the next meeting date be set to be determined in 2025. For everyone knows we're not meeting again this year. Moved by Councillor Cuddy, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Just, it's okay, next meeting date 2025. Comment, Councillor Rahman?
Yeah, thank you. And just a comment. So I will say, one of the things I appreciate about our working group structure is the ability to look at a problem through a report that's provided and have the opportunity to explore it in more depth. And then look for potential opportunities for a different approach. So I do think that we need more opportunities to do that. And in this regard, having the structure around looking for those opportunities for savings and efficiencies and looking for revenue generation, I personally think from a mandate perspective that that's helpful, but I agree, I do want to see where these discussions land. The challenge here is that this is so preliminary in our approach for 2024 that it's going to be hard for us to then justify how we get started again in 2025. But I do wonder, right now, as a working group, our list of things to do is generated from the deferred matters list. But I'm wondering if there's a way that there's also an opportunity to generate those discussions elsewhere in the corporation or through our through ABCs or other avenues, so that it's not just a one-way feed of information and ideas through the deferred matters list, but also through potentially other sources. And I don't know if that's what was contemplated when this was set up either. So just throwing that out there.
I'll note that you're welcome to ask that question at SPPC, as the mayor created this group under his powers, and could be an excellent question for him. As chair of this working group, I would say the only outside organization that wasn't an ABC, the city, approached, and they were just looking if we took away work from the city and gave them contracts instead. So perhaps not the way that we're looking at, but that was the only one that's approached me outside of, can we do that? And I know, as Councillor Lehman said about his hats, we never see him wear. Just if we're at board stuff, you tend to do some of that work there and don't approach the city. But Councillor Lehman?
just from my experience with this working group, I just hope that I experience frustration, to be honest with you, because anytime we try to do something substantive that would move the dial, we had enough visiting counselors in here that essentially we were at like SPPC, I felt. So, you know, we have a big, debate here and then we just move that debate to SPPC. So what is the value of having a working group? Why don't we just go to SPPC and have that debate at that? Because we're going to have it anyway. And it was almost, I just felt like a duplication of effort in a way. So I am not too eager, to be honest with you, in continuing on with this group. I'm fine to, leave it in limbo depending on the budget update. But I'll be reticent to continue on personally.
Vice Chair, could you take the chair for a moment?
I take the chair and I recognize the Budget Chair Pelosa.
If we're having a full candidate conversation, sharing Councillor Lehman's concerns that this group, which is not the majority of council, but close to, spends a substantial amount of time thinking, working with staff, discussing with staff, doing the work here, and then hatching it at committee, and then council, and then holding tight to see if anything, even if it passes at council, doesn't mean it's gonna make it into the mayor's budget. And then having that conversation again at budget, and as the budget chair, looking for efficient meetings. And by that point, we would have already had those conversations 5 times. So looking at efficiencies of staff, if we're looking for efficiencies of other things, it is all staff time as well. Preparing and having these conversations and or sitting through them. So for the committee's information or the working group's information, I had raised those concerns already with the mayor. So he, as chair, those were my concerns and he is aware of them. So I'm fine holding tight. I'm also fine if some committee members leave the committee and take leave, that's fine too. If we all take leave and we find ways to do this work other ways, I'm good either way. Nothing's personal. I know you guys love spending time with me. I'll return chair and then I know that there's Councillor Lehman.
And I'll return the chair to Budget Chair Pelosa, as the speaker, Steve Lemon, on the list.
Thank you, Councillor Lehman.
Yeah, so I believe this was set up by the mayor. Am I correct on that? Yeah. So I think based on the comments, like the mayor will obviously read the minutes here and I think that's enough feedback from, certain, your comments, my comments, Councillor Rahman's comments to, make his decision. Like he made the committee, he can dissolve the committee. So I think basically we've covered both sides. We've put off meeting date. We haven't formally recommended to the mayor to dissolve it, but for all intents and purposes, I think those concerns are raised.
Thank you. I'll do a couple of further comments, because then the motion on the floor is just that we'll meet to be determined in 2025 unless the mayor does something else, or it's always up to the college chair not to call meetings, but Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, I will say, I liked what I heard from Councillor Rahman in terms of at least the notion that perhaps divisions of the city or even boards and commissions could come before us and suggest ideas themselves that for our consideration to look into. I also recognize that doesn't necessarily appear to be the way that the mayor has structured the terms of reference. But that I don't think precludes having the terms of reference adjusted. And so the one thought that I'm just going to kind of wrap up on is if there is a decision that this working group should continue, I would be in favor of asking the mayor to change the terms of reference to also allow divisions of the city, boards and commissions to appear before us with their own opportunities for us to consider. And I know that we can invite, just as we can at governance working group, sort of experts to come before us. But I think that if we're going to continue, I think that we do need to be able to ask, not just bouncing ideas off of each other, but I think we need to be able to say, you know, Mr. Ciccone from the library, we would like you to attend the November SWORG and talk to us about what you're doing. Or Ms. Pelesny at LTC, we would like you to attend the January SWORG and tell us what you're doing and any ideas that you might have. I think I'd like us to be able to, I don't want to use the word compel because it's like you want to be cooperative, but at the same time, you know, when you look at parliamentary committees and things that happen at other levels of government where they call sort of expert witnesses in to talk to them about the area that they're investigating changes in. I'd like us to have that same sort of opportunity if this working group is going to continue into 2025. So just sharing those thoughts. I know that's a really preliminary suggestion that Councillor Rahman put on the floor today, but I actually really, it sparked an interest for me in terms of how, if an iteration of this working group continues, how it maybe needs to change to be more effective in the future.
I'll note that the senior leadership team is currently in their own meeting, but we do have online Ms. Barbone. Ms. Barbone, are you with us or just? Perfect. Yeah, I didn't know if you're trying to do two meetings at once. I don't know if you, having heard those comments from two colleagues about how city divisions, if there's a current avenue of how they would bring forward ideas and opportunities, if you just want to update us briefly, if you know.
So certainly through the chair, I mean, one of the, through budget development, that's certainly one of the opportunities as we have regular conversations and we do a general budget kickoff every year where we do one of the things that we are always open to working with all the teams as to all the boards and commissions and particularly through the service review training that will be coming up, we'll be having those conversations about opportunities and what things they might bring forward. So obviously the boards through their governance channels need to have those conversations at their boards, but at any time through those discussions, those would be something that we could bring forward through the appropriate committee, because many of the boards and commissions do already, you know, report through to the various committees and also through the budget process where business cases have been developed and brought forward. So those would be the top avenues and opportunities that we would have through the regular annual discussions, but certainly through budget monitoring, we're always having those discussions when we look at how they're doing and what other ways in terms of how they might be operating and any ways we can assist. So I don't know if that gives you exactly what you're looking for, but those are certainly the avenues that we're using regularly now.
Thank you. And the clerks have sent through from our terms of reference of the committee of its existence. Point 6 was that SWORG may engage in relevant public feedback avenues and consultation supports recommendations to gather input and insights on the review process and potential impacts of proposed changes. So I would assume relevant public feedback avenues would involve agency boards and commissions, but we could always clarify some language if we move forward. Okay. I see no further hands at this time. The motion on the floor is that we to be determined a date in 2025. Calling the question, hand vote, all in favor?
Motion carries.
Thank you. Deferred matters and additional business. I've not been aware of any within our package. Seeing none at committee, that would move us on to adjournment. So I would need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cuddy, seconded by Councillor Purble. A hand vote of all in favor of adjournment. John, are you okay? You just, okay. There's a panic if you don't want to go. Okay. A hand vote of adjournment.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are adjourned.